Everybody, over the course of the last week, we have talked a lot about Jeskai Control in Standard. We've done why you should play the deck, a deck tech of the deck, how to sideboard with the deck against the top 10 most popular decks in Standard, flex slots and different builds with the deck, as well as nuances, tips, and tricks with the deck. So I want to combine them all into one giant, comprehensive deep dive. Enjoy.
Jeskai Control is a pretty traditional control deck. However, it kills with creatures that also help with controlling. It plays board wipes, it plays removal spells, it plays counter spells, just like a normal control deck, but it's based around Shiko, the new Jeskai Dragon. Shiko, Paragon of the Way, is a 4/5 for 5 with Flying and Vigilance, and when it enters, exile target non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. Copy it, then you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So normally effects like this only target instants and sorceries, but it's anything that costs 3 or less. So you can cast a temporary lockdown from your graveyard. You can cast Stock Up from your graveyard to get yourself even far ahead. You just cast a Lightning Helix from your graveyard. It doesn't really matter. But this is the card that like pulls the deck ahead. You get counter your opponent's creatures, kill your opponent's creatures, board wipe, all of that stuff, do normal controlling things, draw cards, whatever. And then all of a sudden on turn 5, you can play a 4/5 with Vigilance, so you can apply pressure to your opponent, and then wipe the board, kill another thing, draw, and like stock up and effectively hit 2 cards off the top 5. And so this is the card, and this is the thing that really puts away your opponents. The issue with this versus like a more traditional blue-white control deck is that the mana is not good. Very often, at least in my experience and watching people play this deck, a lot of the matches that you lose to yourself. Either you don't have color or too many things come in tapped or whatever. And that can be kind of tough in a control deck. But once you get stabilized, this deck puts away opponents. It's kind of middling in price as far as standard decks go. It's not the most expensive deck, but also it's not cheap by any means. It's about $390 in tabletop as of recording this video, and right around 260 tickets on Magic Online. It's a pretty decent collection building deck. It runs a lot of lands that are played in plenty of other decks. In fact, a lot of lands that are even played in Pioneer and Modern, and a lot of cards that will just remain good in Standard. So it's a fine collection building deck, so the price tag doesn't hurt as bad, but it's still kind of icky. Good matchups include Black-White Pixie, Red-Green Aggro, and Blue-White Control. It beats up on the mirror because like it actually has threats and can win the game. Bad matchups include like Dimir mid-range, sort of kinda, but it's a new enough deck that it's hard to kind of really solidify what the good and bad matchups are for the deck.
This is Jeskai Control. We're going to talk about the deck. I mean, effectively what this deck is attempting to do is what every other control deck's. Wipe the board with, these board wipes, draw a bunch of cards, kill the things that enter the battlefield, and really take over the game with these powerful dragons like Shiko, Meringue River Regents, and Honorary Dragon Beza, the Bounding Spring. And then kill with those creatures that also pull you farther ahead in the game. As far as the mana base goes, it's just Jeskai lands, a lot of enter tapped lands, which is a little sketchy, but also these enter tap lands kind of filter our draws. We're playing a Quarry Mountain Monastery. It is a land that enters tapped unless you control plains or an island. Pretty easy for this deck to do. And we can tap it to add a red, or you can pay 4 mana and tap it and exile top card of our library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card. Very good if the game is going super, super long and you just need to dig indefinitely, even though you're devoting a lot of mana to it. We're playing 3 steps ahead. 3 steps ahead is a 1 mana instant, however, has Spree. We're going to pay an additional 2 to counter target spell, pay an additional 3 to create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control, and you pay 2 to draw 2 cards, then discard a card. Worse, this card is a cancel, which is totally fine. However, like in the deep late game, top decking this card and then like countering something and also drawing 2, then discarding a card for 5 mana is super, super powerful. And it has these like kind of side effects where you can copy a Beza and gain more life if you need to, copy a Shiko. These are legendary, so you'll have to sack one, but you still get the end of the battlefield effect. Copy a Meringue River Region is absolutely disgusting. But the issue is having to pay 3 mana for it to be relevant at all, and then it's only a little good. It's kind of scary, so it's good in like very specific situations, so that's why we're only playing 2. We're playing 3 Get Lost. Get Lost, a 2 mana instant, destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. Pretty unconditional removal. The map tokens can kind of come back to bite you though. It can make one creature very, very big, or have your opponent draw a bunch of cards, and also it doesn't gain you life like some other spot removal we can play. Playing to change the equation. Change the equation is 2 mana instant. Choose 1 counter target spell with mana value 2 or less. Or counter target red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. This is this counters like most things in Standard. Most things are very small to the ground or red or green. It's just like a very good counter spell. We're playing 2 Dispelling Exhale. Dispelling Exhale is a 2-mana instant. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may behold a dragon, where you reveal a dragon from your hand or choose a dragon you control to behold. Any counter target spell in this controller pays 2. If a dragon was beheld, counter that spell in this controller pays 4 instead. Just a really good semi-unconditional removal, and reasonably easy to behold, so it ends up being a better mana leak in a lot of situations. Playing 2 Roiling Dragonstorm is a 2-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, draw 2 cards, then discard a card. When a dragon you control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. Very, very good in the early games. Allows us to filter our draws and like get some card advantage and stuff just for 2 mana. And then in the late game, it can pull us way, way far ahead. Combining this with like a Shiko return to the hand, be able to replay it and draw some more cards, or even Meringue River Regent. We're playing 4 Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix is a 2-mana instant. It deals 3 damage to any target. You gain 3 life. Very good. Burning the opponent, being a Lightning Helix, Shiko Lightning Helix. I see a lot of games ending like that. But also very good against the aggressive decks, being able to gain life and also kill their creatures. Playing 2 Split Up. Split Up is a 3-mana sorcery. Choose 1 to destroy all tap creatures, destroy all untap creatures. Most of the time, against the decks that Split Up is good against, the creatures often have haste and they're immediately turning them sideways. And so very often this 3-mana just wipe the board. However, a lot of those decks are playing Corey Steelcutter, and Split Up does not get rid of Corey Steelcutter, so that's definitely an issue. We're playing 3 Temporary Lockdown. Temporary Lockdown is a 3-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. So this is decent against Corey Steelcutter and gets rid of even non-creatures, where Split Up cannot. The issue with this is that the Prowess decks and a lot of other decks are playing into the Floodmaw, and a very common play pattern is Temporary Lockdown, wipe your board, and then they wait a few turns, and then on your end step, when they see an opening into the Floodmaw, Temporary Lockdown, they get all their things back, untap, and then Jeskai dies. So even though Temporary Lockdown is on paper a way better board wipe than Split Up, it can be really sketchy if the game goes long and you're unable to close out the game or protect Temporary Lockdown. We're playing poor Stock Up. Stock Up is a 3-mana sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library, put 2 of them in your hand, the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. This is our primary card advantage engine. This is insane. This is just like a slightly worse dig through time. 3 mana for you to be able to essentially select 2 cards. Feels a lot like tutoring. Rediscover the Way is kind of just Stock Up number 5, because we really want to Shiko into Stock Up to kind of close out the games. Its first 2 chapters, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 to your hand, the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. And its last chapter is when you cast a non-creature spell this turn, target creature you control gains double strike till end of turn. That is rarely relevant, the 3rd chapter, though it has for me before. But the first 2 chapters are simply ridiculous, and just are pretty good Stock Up cosplay. Now, all of these cards that I just listed, except I guess maybe the counter spells, can be targeted with Shiko, which I guess I'll talk about now. Shiko's a 5-mana 4/5 with flying and vigilance. It's a dragon, so it can be beheld. When it enters, exile target non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. Copy it, then you may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So this includes Stock Up. This includes these sagas, though the saga will be a token. This includes the Temporary Lockdown you can cast, but again, the Temporary Lockdown that'll be on the battlefield will be a token of Temporary Lockdown. And this is the way that you turn the corner in most matchups, is Shiko copying one of these things to either wipe the board or pull farther ahead with card advantage, and then you have a threat and either a bunch of cards or a clear board, and you just kind of win the game. Bounding Springs is a 4-mana 4/5. When Beza enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you gain 4 life. If an opponent has more life than you, create 2 1/1 bluefish creature tokens. If an opponent has more creatures than you, draw a card. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you. So this is a great catch-up card, but the biggest reason we're playing this is so we don't get aggroed out before we take over the game as the control deck. It's a big creature for 4 mana, big butt, and also can create 2 more blockers and gain life against these aggressive decks. And then incidentally can be decent against other stuff as well. We're playing a Day of Judgment, 4 mana destroy all creatures. This way we don't have to ask the questions of Split Up and Temporary Lockdown, just like a decent board wipe. We're playing Meringue River Regent, which is a 6-mana 6/7 with flying. When this creature enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their owner's hands, and has Coil and Catch, which is the omen of it. For 4 mana, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. So in the mid game, this can kind of pull us ahead with Coil and Catch, and then in the late game can pseudo clear our opponent's board, maybe reset a Shiko or a Beza or a temporary lockdown, and be a crazy threat on its own. And then we're playing a Jeskai Revelation. Jeskai Revelation is a 7-mana instant. Return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. Jeskai Revelation deals 4 damage to any target. Create 2 1/1 white monk creature tokens with prowess. Draw 2 cards, you gain 4 life. This can really just pull us way ahead in those matchups that are going super long. This can just kind of be the death knell that we are able to cast. So in this main deck, again, we're drawing a ton of cards, countering stuff, killing stuff, trying to survive until we can take over the game with one of these dragons that will either either clear the board or have us draw a bunch more cards and then also be a threat in and of itself. As far as the sideboard goes, we're playing 2 Authority of the Consuls. Authority of the Consuls, 1-mana enchantment. Creatures your opponent control enter tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent control enters, you gain 1 life. Really good against the aggressive decks and kind of turns off haste, which is awesome. We're playing 2 Kutziel's Flankers, a 3-mana 3/1 with flash. When this creature enters, choose 1. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature for each creature that left the battlefield under your control this turn. That is the one we're almost never going to do. You gain 2 life and scry 2 and exile target player's graveyard. So this is really decent graveyard hate, being able to just get rid of the whole graveyard at instant speed. And you can gain 2 life and scry 2, which is also like totally fine against decks where you feel like you need more threats or gaining life is good. Playing a Lauren in third path, 3-mana 2/1 with vigilance. When Lauren enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. You can tap it to have you and target opponent each draw a card. Great artifact enchantment hate. We love it. Playing 2 Negate. Negate is a 2-mana instant counter target non-creature spell. Really good against decks that are playing powerful non-creature spells like the Mirror Match or something. Playing 2 Tishana's Tidebinder. Is a 3-mana 3/2 with flash. When this creature enters, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent lose all abilities for as long as this creature remains on the battlefield. This is very good against Aberranoculus, very good against Corey Steelcutter. There's a bunch of other triggered abilities, but those are the big ones that we can just kind of turn off. Really good against Shiko. Tishana's Tidebinder is very good against a lot of decks. Playing 2 Jace Perfected Mind is a 4-mana planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. It's completed, so we can pay 2 life instead of that 4th mana. However, it will enter with 2 less loyalty. Its +1 is until your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -3/-0. Its -2 is target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 more cards in it, you draw 3 cards, otherwise you draw a card. And its -X is target player mills 3 times X cards. This is the card that is absolutely insane in the control matchups that, against decks that are going very, very long with you, that are looking to grind. This can make the library effectively a life total, and that's very scary. We're playing 2 Whitley Fleege. Whitley Fleege is a 4-mana 4/4. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1. And then the relevant part is if a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So this is really, really good against Hopeless Nightmare, because if they Hopeless Nightmare you, you put Whitley Fleege onto the battlefield, and then now we have a really, really scary threat. The reason we're playing Whitley Fleege instead of Obstinate Baloth is probably a little bit better in a vacuum. We can actually cast Whitley Fleege, where we just can't cast Obstinate Baloth. And then we're playing 2 Ghost Vacuum. It's a 1-mana artifact. We can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard. You can pay 6 mana and tap it and sacrifice this artifact to put each creature card exiled with this artifact onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. This is our graveyard hate for 1 mana, which is awesome, but also that upside, being able to pay 6 mana and sacrifice it can end games for sure. As far as the sideboard goes, why isn't there a number showing by Authority of the Console and Magic Online, dude? Okay, there are 2 Authority of the Consoles there. But we're playing 2 Authority of the Consoles. It turns off haste, against aggressive decks and lets you gain life. Kutziel's Flanker is great instant speed graveyard hate, can apply pressure, and gaining life and being a blocker is pretty relevant. Lauren as artifact and enchantment hate. Negate, against non-ground creature spells if we want to interact on the stack. Tishana's Tidebinder is great against triggered abilities and can also turn off cards like Cutter. Jace the Perfected Mind is our Mirror Breaker and really long game breaker. Whitley Fleege is for the Pixie decks, specifically for the Hopeless Nightmares, and then Ghost Vacuum is our graveyard hate. That being said, the most popular deck is It Prowess, where we're going to be bringing in Authority of the Consoles. We bring in Lauren. We bring in Tishana's Tidebinder. I'm also a pretty big fan of Negate in this matchup, especially like in the context of a control deck. We're going to be taking out 3 steps ahead. The game just doesn't go long enough enough to make 3 steps ahead really, really good. 3 mana is a lot to counter something. We're going to take out Jeskai Revelation because there's no world we're ever getting to that card. We can take out some of the draw spells because really it's just about like surviving as long as possible. And the Varying River Region is like a pretty cuttable card. So our entire deck can be focused on stopping what our opponent is doing plus stock up. That's how sideboard against is a prowess. The second most popular deck is Jeskai Oculus. Against Oculus, playing Kutsil's Flanker. Tishana's Tidebinder is also pretty excellent against the deck, especially against Oculus itself. And then Ghost Vacuum is really solid. Negate is on the short list, but I don't think there's enough super powerful cards, like non-creature cards, to make Negate worth it. Like Profs really is the only one I can think of. So I don't really like that. We're going to be taking out Beza. This isn't a super aggressive deck except for its like most aggressive draws, but the game also doesn't go long enough to be casting Jeskai Revelation, so we're for sure taking that out. Change the Equation doesn't counter some pretty crucial things, so I like taking that out as well. And Shaven a Roiling Dragonstorm is probably our worst draw spell, so this is how we're sideboarding against Jeskai Oculus. The third most popular deck is Mono Red. Aggro against Mono Red, we're bringing in Authority. The consoles, we're bringing in the Kutsil's Flanker, just to gain life and block. And we are bringing out a lot of these cards that just kind of straight up don't do anything. But we are set up pretty solid for Mono Red. So we're bringing out the River Regents, Jeskai Revelation, and then to Rediscover the Way. Rolling Dragonstorm is just a little bit better because it's cheaper, so we can leave more mana up, but this is how we're sideboarding against Mono Red. The fourth most popular deck is the Mirror Match. In the mirror, Jace is super duper, obviously. Negate lets us interact on the stack. Tishana's Tidebinder can stop Shiko and also just be like a flash, like attacker, can stop things like Rediscover the Way and whatnot as well. And then Kutsil's Flanker, just similarly as a flash attacker, can also get rid of graveyards and whatever. Taking out Split Ups and Temporary Lockdowns. Basically, we're bringing out all of the cards that are meant for the aggressive decks. So Split Up, Temporary Lockdowns, and the Bezas. Keep it in the Change the Equation, notably because it counters Shiko, which is really good, though does not counter Jeskai Revelation, which is a little awkward. This is how I sideboarding the Mirror Match. The fifth most popular deck is Esper Self Bounce. Against Esper Bounce, I like Lauren, I like Negate, I like Tishana's Tidebinder, and then Willy Fleege for the Hopeless Nightmares. It's kind of hard to snipe things with Split Up in this deck, so I like cutting Split Up, cutting Jeskai Revelation. The game's just, It's not a hyper-aggressive deck, so I like cutting Beza, and just Shave on a Rediscover the Way, and this is how we're sideboarding against Esper Bounce. The sixth most popular deck is Blue-White Omni. Against Blue-White Omni, we're Love and Kutsil's Flanker. Ghost Vacuum is also obviously very good. Negate lets us interact on the stack, which we love. And we're cutting a lot of these cards that are meant for the aggressive decks. Shaven on a Beza. Beza's a fine threat, so we'll keep that in. That's fine. It's our sideboarding against Azorius Omni. The seventh most popular deck is Domain, 4-color Zur, whatever you want to call it. Bringing in the Lauren. Maybe. There we go. Bringing in the Lauren. Negate's also excellent. Tishana's Tidebinder shuts off a lot of cards in their deck. The game also goes very long, so we're bringing in the Jace and bringing out a lot of the cards that are meant for aggressive matchups. We really, this is kind of all about just like drawing as many cards as possible. Looking for one more card to bring out. Totally fine to bring out a Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix kind of gives us reach against the deck. It's not really killing anything. Or not killing a lot of stuff. So some sideboarding against Domain. The eighth most popular deck is Dimir Midrange. Against Dimir Midrange, I pretty much only want Tishana's Tidebinder, to be totally real. Shuts off a lot of cards in their deck. And then Temp Lockdown really only hits Spyglass, Bat, and Floodpits Drowner. All the stuff we're really worried about, Temporary Lockdown doesn't hit, so I like Shaving on that, and this time sideboarding against Dimir Midrange. Against Orzhov Bounce, Black-White Bounce, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, we're bringing in the Wiltleaf Lieges. Negate's a little bit worse against this deck because it's much more creature-based, so I don't like bringing that in. However, Lauren is pretty good, and Tishana's Tidebinder because there's just so many triggered abilities. Bringing out the Jeskai Revelations, similar to Esper, it's really hard to kind of get them with Split Up, and then we're cutting the rest of the slots with Beza, so we'll be keeping a Beza in, and this is our sideboarding against Orzhov Pixie. And then lastly, the 10th most popular deck in Standard is Blue-White Control. Against Blue-White Control, we're bringing in Negates, the Jace, we're bringing in Kutsil's Flanker, just as like a flash attacker or whatever. And then Tishana's Tidebinder can turn off the Elspeth. Bringing out these board wipes and these cards that are meant for the aggressive decks. keeping in a single beza. This is our sideboarding against blue-white control.
Oh, hello there. I'm glad you made it this far in the video. It probably means you're enjoying what you're watching. And I just wanted to let you know that I have a TCG Player store that funds a lot of the content that you're seeing that, in part, allows me to do this full time. Because, as you can see from my view count, I do not make enough money to be able to actually do this. So, if these videos have helped you in any way, there's a few ways that you can support me. Beyond just like donating money, but things that you can get stuff back on. If you have cards you want to sell, then you should email me at justbottingbiz@gmail.com. Put right here. It's also in the description of every one of the videos. We can figure something out. I can make some offers. Having more inventory is super, super helpful, and you get money. And you can support me. The other way you can support me is by buying from my TCG Player store, which is also linked down below and in the link tree and all of that stuff. Link right here. You should totally check that out. I'll send you some cards, maybe write you a little note if I know that you're from the videos. That's it. Please consider it and enjoy the rest of your video.
This is what we are not talking about. These are the non-flex slots in Jeskai Control. If you play Jeskai Control in Standard, you're pretty much bought in to playing these 49 cards in the main deck and these 3 cards in the sideboard. So the question is, when you pick up this deck, what are the 11 cards are you playing in those slots in the main deck? And what are the 12 cards you playing in those slots in the sideboard? Well, these are your options. You essentially get to choose between these 24 cards, picking 11 cards for the main deck, and these 27 cards, picking 12 of them for the sideboard. Let's go over these so you can make an educated decision. You could play an additional 3 Steps Ahead. 3 Steps Ahead is a 1-mana instant with Spree. So you can pay an additional 2 mana to counter target spell, an additional 3 mana to create a token that's a copy of target artifact creature you control, or pay an additional 2 mana to draw 2 cards and discard a card. At worst, this card lets you draw 2 cards then discard. It's also a cancel, but where this card shines is being able to pay 5 mana and do both of that. Be able to counter a spell and get some card selection is very powerful. The issue is 3 mana for a counter spell is just frankly very expensive, but it's very good if you're able to pull it off. You can play Destroy Evil. Destroy Evil is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. Destroy target creature, toughness 4 or greater. Destroy target enchantment. There's a lot of very powerful enchantments, and it kills creatures that are killing us super quickly. You can play the 4th Get Lost. Get Lost is a 2-mana instant. Destroy target creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Its controller creates 2 map tokens. This is pretty unconditional removal. Unfortunately, it doesn't hit artifacts, but it's instant feed, 2 mana, pretty unconditional removal. The maps do come back to bite you sometimes, though, but that is a risk we are willing to take when the removal is so unconditional. You can play a Parting Gust. Parting Gust is 2 mana instant. Gift a tap fish. Exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+3 counter on it at the beginning of the next end step. So this allows you to give your opponent basically a 1/1 when you can kill a creature, like exile a creature, or you can bounce your own creatures, whether they be Bezas to get the triggers again, or Shikos, or Meringue River Regents, or whatever, which is pretty powerful, and you don't have to gift the tap fish when you do that very powerful thing. You can play Change the Equation. Change the Equation is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. Counter target spell with mana value 2 or less, or counter target red or green spell with mana value 6 or less. Most things that you care about, I say most, not all, are either 2 or less or red or green 6 or less. There's a very short list, probably single-digit list of cards we care about that this does not counter, and being 2 mana is pretty powerful. You can play up to 3 Dispelling Exhale. It is a 2-mana instant. As initial cost to cast a spell, you may behold a dragon. Counter target spell unless its controller pays 2. If a dragon was beheld, counter that spell unless controller pays 4. So we can, of course, behold one of the 6 dragons that we are playing anyway, or one of 5 or 6, depending on what you choose for flex slots. And this is just either a slightly worse mana leak or a slightly better mana leak. The issue with a card like this is, while it's very good in the early and mid game, while your opponents are still tapping out, it's really bad in the late game, which is where we want to be with the deck. So it's tough to play the entire playset. You could play up to 2 Roiling Dragonstorm. Roiling Dragonstorm is a 2-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, draw 2 cards. then discard a card. When a dragon you control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. Just a very good loot effect, something for us to do on turn 2, especially if we don't have counter magic to leave up. And whenever we play a Shiko or Meringue River Regent, it allows us to replay Roiling Dragonstorm to draw additional cards and get even farther ahead. You play up to a Braid. A Braid is a 2-mana instant. Choose one. A Braid deals 3 damage to target creature, destroy target artifact. I'm about to say enchantment for some reason. This is fine removal. The 3 damage is fine for 2 mana, right? Damage-based removal is pretty medium in a white deck that has non-damage-based removal. But the big reason we'd be playing a Braid is so that we can take out Cutter. Being able to... It'd be a removal spell anyway, so we can play it in the main deck, but also destroy target artifact is just so powerful against Cutter. Also pretty good against a Ghost Vacuum. You can play up to No More Lies. No More Lies is a 2-mana instant. Counter target spell in the control pays 3. If the spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it to its owner's graveyard. It is a slightly harder to cast, but effectively slightly better mana leak. Has similar issues as Dispelling Exhale, though the exile can kind of matter. You can play a Split Up. Split Up is a 3-mana sorcery. Choose one, destroy all tap creatures, or destroy all untap creatures. This is really good with a lot of opponents playing into the Flood Maw. Being able to return temporary lockdown to your hand during your end step, and then they can untap and kill you is like a really, really common play pattern. And so playing a card like Split Up, while it doesn't deal with Steel Cutter or things like that, or Storm Chaser's Talent directly or whatever, Split Up can often give you more time, is good against the like non-hyper aggressive decks, and then also it very often allows you to destroy all the creatures because the decks that you are playing this against are just attacking you. You can play 2 more Temporary Lockdown in the main deck. Temporary Lockdown is a 3-mana enchantment. When this enchantment enters, exile each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less unless this enchantment leaves, until this enchantment leaves the battlefield. This on its surface, again, is better than Split Up against the aggressive decks. It just exiles just everything. Again, the issue with Temp Lockdown is it can be returned and then they get all their stuff, and there's a way, a playset way that a lot of these decks are playing to return Temporary Lockdown to your hand at instant speed. You can play Rediscover the Way. Rediscover the Way is a 3-mana saga. Its first 2 chapters are look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand and the rest at the bottom of your library in any order. And its 3rd chapter is whenever you cast a non-creature spell this turn, target creature you control gains double strike until end of turn. This is mostly just stock up number 5. You get to essentially look at the top 6 and pick 2 rather than look at the top 5 and pick 2, but it's the course over 2 turns. And then sometimes the 3rd chapter is relevant. 99% of the time we don't care about the 3rd chapter. We just want to go in the graveyard so we can bring it back with Shiko. But it's just another stock up that allows us to get card advantage. You can play 2 more Beza, the Bounding Spring. Beza is a 4-mana 4/5. When it enters, create a treasure token. If an opponent controls more lands than you, you gain 4 life. If an opponent has more life than you, create 2 1/1 blue fish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you, and draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. So this is a great catch-up mechanic in some mid-range matchups, sometimes control matchups, but we're mostly playing it for the aggressive decks. Against the aggressive decks, we almost always get a 4/5 blocker, 2 1/1 blockers, and 4 life, which is exactly what we need to kind of transition into that late mid game where this deck starts to shine. You can play Ride Zen. Ride Zen's a 5-mana instant that costs 3 less if it targets a tapped permanent. Exile target creature or vehicle. Exile removal is really solid. Very often against the decks that this is good. It costs 2 mana, which is totally fine. You can play an Elspeth Stormslayer. It's a 5-mana planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. It says if 1 or more tokens will be created under your control, twice that many of tokens are created instead. It's +1. It's create a 1/1 white soldier creature token, which essentially means you create 2 because it does the effect. It's 0 is put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain flying until your next turn, so it allows you to kind of alpha strike with those tokens. And it's -3 is destroy target creature and opponent controls with mana value 3 or greater. Very good against those mid-sized creatures and mid-game creatures. This is just like another way to buy time and also be in a kill condition. 5-mana sorcery spell though is really tough in a deck like this if it doesn't totally take over the game, and Elspeth doesn't really totally take over the game, but it's very strong. You can play Meringue River Regent. Meringue River Regent is a 6-mana 6/7 with flying. When this creature enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their own hands, and then it has an Omen of Coiling Catch. Draw 3 cards and discard a card. This is very good in the mid game, being able to get that card selection, get that card advantage, and then in the late game it can just be a kill condition, returning things like Roiling Dragonstorm, getting attackers out of the way, getting permanents we care about out of the way, and just being a giant flyer. And then you play a Chandra Hopespeakin. Chandra Hopespeakin is a 6-mana planeswalker that starts at 5 loyalty. It says whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. This +2 is add 2 mana of any combination of colors, +1. Exile the top 5 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. And its -X is deal X damage to each of up to 2 targets. This is a very powerful card that allows us to turn our removals into 2 removal, turn our card advantage into super card advantage, and allows us to like dig. One kind of scary part about this though is if we +1 too many times, we can kind of mill ourselves, and that's something that's really scary for this deck against decks that Chandra happens to be good against. So we have to be really conservative when we use it as direct card advantage. We're mostly playing Chandra for the -X to finally kill our opponent, or the static ability. So you're gonna be selecting 11 of these 24 cards to the main deck, and then we need 12 of these 27 cards for the sideboard. You can pick from Authority of the Consuls. Authority of the Consuls, 1 mana enchantment. Creatures your opponent control enter tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life. This is for the aggressive decks. This turns off haste because they enter tapped. It allows you to gain life and can help you transition into the stage of the game that this deck is powerful in. You can play 2 Exercise. Exercise is a 2 mana sorcery. Exile target artifact, enchantment, or creature with power 4 or greater. This is basically just like slightly better, slightly worse Destroy Evil. Sorcery speed kind of sucks, but being able to get rid of artifacts really matters, especially with like Corey Steelcutter and Ghost Vacuum and stuff being decent against us. And then does the other stuff that Destroy Evil does, and it's exile removal, which can matter. Cootseal's Flanker, you can play up to 3 of these. Is a 3 mana 3/1 with flash. When this creature enters, choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature for each creature that left the battlefield under your control this turn. You gain 2 life and scry 2, or exile target player's graveyard. We're rarely ever going to pick that first mode, so really gaining 2 life, scrying 2, and being a blocker against aggressive decks is solid. And then instant speed being a threat and exiling a graveyard against decks that care about the graveyards is very strong. Lauren of the Third Path is a 3 mana 2/1 vigilance. When Lauren enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, and we can tap it to have you and target opponent each draw a card, which is a desperation play mostly, but this being a threat, a blocker, and something that can destroy artifacts and enchantments is pretty powerful. You can play an additional Day of Judgment. Day of Judgment, 4 mana sorcery, destroy all creatures. Just reset buttons are important. And board wipes and whatnot. I've already talked about change the equation. You can just play that in the sideboard, but we could also play Riverturn Monument. Riverturn Monument's a 2 mana artifact. You can pay 1 mana and tap it to have any number of target players each mill 2 cards. And its exhaust is 4 mana and tap it, any number of target players each mill cards equal to the number of cards in their graveyard. Very good in mirror matches and domain and in any other deck that is going super long. We can just go on the mill plan if this sticks. You can play an additional Tashaana's Tidebinder. Tashaana's Tidebinder is a 3 mana 3/2 with flash. When this creature enters, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities for as long as this creature remains on the battlefield. This is a flash threat, which we love, and being able to counter these triggered abilities is really solid. I mean, what immediately pops in my head is like Corey Steelcutter, or in the mirror match, stopping the Shiko, or turning off Oculus, or whatever. Jace the Perfected Mind is competing for a spot with Riverturn Monument, but Jace is a 4 mana planeswalker where one of those mana is Phyrexian Blue. But it will enter with 2 less loyalty if you pay that Phyrexian Blue with life. Its +1 is till the end of your next turn, up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0. -2 is target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw a card. And its -X is target player mills 3 times X cards. So it's a little bit easier to deal with than the Riverturn Monument because it's a planeswalker. However, it's a card that actually gives you card advantage rather than kind of going all in on the mill plan like Riverturn Monument does, which is pretty solid. Lithomantic Barrage, we can play 2 of, is a 1 mana sorcery. The spell can't be countered. Lithomantic Barrage deals 1 damage to target creature. A planeswalker deals 5 damage instead if that target is white and or blue. Very good against the Oculus decks, and basically any white or blue deck like Dimir or whatever. You can play a Pyroclasm. Pyroclasm's a 2 mana sorcery. Deals 2 damage to each creature. Good against decks that are going wide. Don't that's it. It's also a really cheap interaction against Corey Steelcutter now that I think about it too. You can play an Obstinate Baloth. Obstinate Baloth is a 4 mana 4/4. When this creature enters, you gain 4 life, but if a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So notice that we cannot cast this card. However, the way that the Esper Pixie decks beat us is with Hopeless Nightmare. And Hopeless Nightmare, they go turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, and you can just put Obstinate Baloth on the battlefield when you discard it, which is really solid. And also gaining 4 life kind of matters against that deck because they can be pretty aggressive against us. This is competing for spots with Wiltleaf Liege. Wiltleaf Liege is a 4 mana 4/4. Other green creatures you control get +1/+1. Other white creatures you control get +1/+1. And then has the same ability as Obstinate Baloth. If a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, put it onto the battlefield instead of putting it into your graveyard. So the difference between these is Obstinate Baloth is better if the Hopeless Nightmare thing is happening, but Wiltleaf Liege can capitalize on Hopeless Nightmare as well. However, you can cast it. Even though you don't gain 4 life. You can play Zurgo and Ojutai. Zurgo and Ojutai is a 5 mana 4/4 with flying and haste. Zurgo and Ojutai has hexproof as long as it entered this turn. Whenever one or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one into your hand, the rest of the bottom of your library in any order, and then you may return one of those dragons to its owner's hand. So this is a way to, in the late game against like other control decks or other decks that are going very long, for you to get card advantage so you can continue burying your opponent, apply pressure, and then sometimes really cute things happen with Shiko where you can return Shiko and be able to replay it and stuff. Or keep Zurgo and Ojutai hexproof, which is nice too. You can play up to 2 Ghost Vacuum. Ghost Vacuum is a 1 mana artifact. You can tap it to exile target card from a graveyard and pick a 6 mana. Tap it and sacrifice this artifact. Put each creature card exiled with this artifact onto the battlefield under your control with a flying counter on it. Each of them is a 1/1 spirit in addition to its other types. Activate only as a sorcery. This is great graveyard hate that doesn't get rid of your graveyard, so we can't play something like Rest in Peace because we're playing Shiko. But we can graveyard hate our opponent, apply pressure to their graveyard. And then in the deep late game, we can cash in the Ghost Vacuum to put a ton of creatures on the battlefield and get all those under the battlefield effects, which is super good as well. So again, you're picking 12 of these 27 cards for your sideboard, and you're picking 11 of these 24 cards for your main deck. And then you have your very own but stock version of Jeskai Control in Standard. First off, Shiko lets you bring back anything that costs 3 or less, I guess besides lands. That includes temporary lockdowns. It's not just instants and sorceries. For some reason, for a lot of people's gut reaction to this, including mine, is that Shiko can only bring back instants and sorceries. No, you can bring back temporary lockdown and rediscover the way with Shiko. And the thing that comes on the battlefield is a token, which is awkward against Into the Floodmon stuff, but still very, very good. Second off, you are casting that thing from Shiko. So a lot of Jeskai Control decks play High Noon. And when you're playing High Noon, if it's on the battlefield, Shiko doesn't do anything. It's just a Vigilance Dragon. So you play it, and then you can't cast that thing from the graveyard because that would be the second spell you cast. So be wary putting High Noon in your deck. And then lastly, Meringue River Regent. Immediately, like obviously you want to return like important things of your opponent and tax their mana and all of that stuff. But also you can target your own stuff and reset enter the battlefield abilities like maybe other Meringue River Regents or other Shikos or other Rediscover the Ways in like super, super long grindy games and get that card advantage and get that synergy. If you like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.